So you want to learn a foreign language for that place you want to visit, that book you want to read, or maybe that person that you would like to meet. But that takes time and money if you can even find out where to start, right? Well, yes, it takes time. No, it doesn't take money. At least it doesn't have to. And you can start right here with these 3 things. My name is Zachary, and after learning 5 foreign languages, I'm here to share with you what's worked for me, what hasn't, and how you can blow past your language goals for any language in as little as just a couple of months. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. Number 1, grammar. You need it, I promise, and it kind of sucks, but how much is up to you? Hear me out. So first, 2 quick examples. Imagine if I picked you up and dropped you into Beijing, China. No background on the language, neither on the culture. I just expected you to learn by pure immersion. And you couldn't find anybody or anything that spoke your native language. Would I really expect you to learn everything to a native level fluency in 1 year by pure immersion? No, I wouldn't. Now imagine we're back in your high school Spanish class or whatever your language was. And I'm your teacher and I write up on the board a bunch of stuff that I expect you to just learn. Here's this chart of grammar, just learn it, love it, and you'll remember it for the test. How often did you remember that for the test? Be honest, because I didn't. And that's okay, because both of those pure immersion, like truly pure immersion, and rote memorization of tables and charts, they both suck. They have their uses eventually, but as a beginner, it's terrible advice. It would be like telling you to run a marathon when you can barely finish a 5K or even a single mile. You need to start somewhere, and when it comes to language, you start with grammar. However, grammar sprawls from the super simple to the complexly convoluted. Learn the basic parts of speech. Things like nouns, pronouns, adjectives, prepositions, conjunctions. Don't worry about learning everything in one topic before moving on. You can learn a lot about a little and end up wasting a lot of time. Learn the very basics of these things. Learn at least what they are, okay? And then move on to the next thing. If your target language has a different alphabet from ones that you know, learn the sights and sounds too. Whether that's Hebrew, Arabic, Russian, whatever it is, Japanese and Korean, they both have alphabets too. Learn the sights and sounds because those are also critical in you actually learning and being successful in your goals in whatever it is for whatever language. And if your language doesn't have an alphabet like Mandarin Chinese, I recommend learning a few of what's called radicals. But I could go down a rabbit hole on that. Learn the rules of thumb of these parts of speech. Again, don't worry about learning everything. Learn the things that are most applicable to you, and then take these rules, take these concepts that you understand, and then find the words and phrases that you care to use the most in your daily life. Find the things that you would actually talk about, not things that really pique your niche interest, because I do that often too. That's not giving you progress immediately. Concepts that you need in contexts that you care about that are useful to you. You need to balance utility and interest, especially at these beginner stages. Now you have the more clearly defined things like parts of speech, and you've identified the context and some words and phrases. You cannot forget other more abstract concepts like word gender if it applies, declension if it applies, different word orders and structures that might happen, and how some of these different parts of speech are formed and used. Tables and texts can help. They make really good references. I recommend 2 things though. 1, don't spend too much time with them, okay? Because it's really easy to look at a chart and just think, if I just learn this stuff, then I'll be good. No, context is king, it really is. The second thing, make your own references, make your own tables, and look for patterns in the tables that you're creating, whether that's endings, whether that's prefixes, whatever it is. Look for patterns in the tables and try to learn those patterns. Put them somewhere neatly, okay? That's why I've made a journal for people like us learning languages, so you can have one central place to capture all your stuff with plenty of space to practice. But if you're more digital, which I certainly am too, I also have a link to Notion. That's what I use. It's great for capturing ideas and exploring a whole bunch of stuff. There are links for both of those in the description. Use whatever you want though. No matter whatever you use, make sure it's something that you will use, okay? And whenever you get bored or frustrated in your target language, remember the 80-20 rule. That 20% of your work yields 80% of your results. You are deep within, whenever you're in this beginner grammar stage, you are deep within that 20% of work that yields 80% of the results for the rest of your time in this language. And guess how much time you're going to be spending in this language? At least if you take it seriously, the rest of your life. I'm assuming English is your native language. You're going to be spending the rest of your life in English, probably, all right? And you will always be learning something in language in general, no matter the language. So you are never, ever done with this whole language thing. So if you really want to take this one seriously, remember that you're in it for the long haul, and this beginner part kind of sucks. It kind of does, but 80-20. This is the 20% that gives you 80% of your results for the rest of your life. So just keep that in mind too, all right? Now, no matter the resource that you use, once you have your stuff in one central location, and you have some kind of grip on the basics of grammar and some basic vocabulary, you're ready for the very next thing, which is where things get a little more fun and a good bit more rewarding too. Comprehensible input. The ideal state of input is where you have 98 to 99% of the stuff that you're already familiar with. All of that is just practice. It's really good stuff in a context you care about. And the stuff that you don't know, you're able to learn by context. Think of it whenever you go to pick out a new book or you want to watch a new movie. You already know, probably, the language that is spoken in that movie. You already know the stuff. So you can learn the characters, the setting, and the plot based on the things that you already know. And if they introduce new things, like maybe it's fantasy, maybe you're watching Lord of the Rings or you're watching Harry Potter, and maybe you've never heard what spells and wands or orcs are. You can learn that by context because the rest of the stuff is already pretty clear to you. Now, of course, this isn't really available to you whenever you're a beginner, and that's okay. Think back to the examples that I gave in the beginning. Why don't you just know the stuff yet? Because you simply don't know, and you can't plop yourself into a movie or a book and expect you to just learn it, right? So remember that 80-20 principle and get cracking on intensive reading. This is where you're going to be at whenever you start a new language. Most of the stuff is just unknown to you. It's literally foreign still, and that's okay. That's just where you're at. Get a good book, an article, whatever you care about, and go line by line. Something that you care about, and just pick it the heck apart. Take your time and really get into the nitty-gritty of every little grammatical detail, every little word, the endings, the things that if it doesn't make sense to you, dive into that. And really learn this text, because it's going to have exponential results for you. And it all happens faster than you think. On top of all of that, whenever you get to the end of this text and you're comfortable with it, at least somewhat, you have a golden opportunity to repurpose that same material for different learnings. Reading is basically a no-stress environment to learn new things or to practice old things. Once you're confident in reading the stuff and you're familiar with the words, speak it out loud. You don't have to think about the words and what the correct formations are. It's already right there in front of you. So speak it. And eventually, once you feel comfortable enough speaking it, record yourself speaking it. Listen back to that later on. Because whenever you're comfortable with one text, with one piece of whatever, that's an opportunity to practice your reading, to practice your speaking, to practice your listening. And if you want to listen to the recordings and write down what you hear, ideally not just from memory because you've read it so much, but you also have an opportunity for writing too. You can practice every single area of language with one good book, with one good article, with 300 words in front of your face that you can find on the internet right now. And this is what I meant earlier with it doesn't have to cost you a single penny to learn a foreign language. You just have to be resourceful enough to know what you need and where you can find it. So I think I mentioned earlier, if I haven't, I'll say it right now, you do need to balance utility of your daily life, but also where you're at in your language and interest, the things that you actually want to know about. Because if you have an interest in interdimensional space beings, it's probably unlikely that you will find basic stuff that's beginner friendly in your target language. So find something that's useful, but something that you care about, start there and pick it apart. Eventually though, you're probably going to need to step outside of your own little bubble. I did too, I have to all the time, and I'm kind of doing it right now. Anyway, I digress. The very next thing, the third and final thing, is output. Talking to another person can be stressful, especially in a foreign language when you don't really know what you're saying. So this is the super scary speaking in front of super scary strangers, right? Where everybody points and laughs at you for not knowing what you're saying. No, not at all. That has so rarely been my experience, at least, and in anybody else that I've spoken to, which are quite a few people around the world, nobody's had that experience really. Very few people have had that experience whenever they're learning a foreign language. It's probably not going to happen to you too. And if you do meet that person that is just mean and nasty to you because you're trying to learn a foreign language, does that really have any bearing on what you're doing? Does somebody else's negative input have any bearing on what you do, on your progress to your goals? It doesn't have to. Now, admittedly, whenever you go out and you challenge yourself and you put yourself in these environments, you'll become pretty aware pretty quickly of what you do know. And you'll become painfully aware of the things that you don't know. That's kind of by design. That's how this works. The things that you do get right, you'll be more confident and able to recall those things later on. And the things that you have a hard time recalling, you're going to be really aware that you need that thing because you needed it now and you're probably going to need it again. So you're going to have a much stronger drive and a more personal connection with whatever the thing is to learn that thing. Whether it's one person on an app or 100 people at a meetup, you're finding a like-minded audience almost anywhere that you go. Chances are there are language exchanges in your area, and there are apps like Tandem, HiLocal, and Italki that are built to connect you with other people that are also learning languages. Often, very, very often, your same target language too. You have plenty of options whenever it comes to meeting new people, and you can do any one of these at your own pace in your own way. AI chatbots are getting more and more advanced, and it's a golden opportunity for people that are more nervous, but also never underestimate the power of narration, of talking to yourself, all right? Just like you have a low/no stress way of getting input, you have a low/no stress way of getting output too. Just talk to yourself. Think about something that you want to talk about and just speak it. Yeah, you can speak it in your mind, but get good practice developing those muscles and actually speaking the things and making the sounds with your face hole that you'll need to know whenever you're in front of other people. And again, even if you were to travel abroad and go meet natives, I've almost never had a negative experience where somebody like scoffs at me or brushes me off for trying to speak their language. Most people that I've met, most people have met, are in fact nice people, and they're just happy to see you making the effort. So learning any foreign language comes down to these 3 steps. It's mastering basic grammar, it's immersing yourself in meaningful input, and challenging yourself to produce the language. Stick to these and you'll be on your way, whether that's in 1 year or just 1 month. And if you want to see more about what I use to learn languages, or you want to be in touch for other things like my upcoming language speedruns, then be sure to like, subscribe, and comment to help me out too. I love answering questions. And maybe check out that video next.